The next question we have is someone's been accepted to U of T and they have a lot of automatic entry scholarships. Unlike the other schools they've heard from, though, they haven't mentioned anything about the scholarships. Do they wait for the final year marks? I don't know. They might do. If you should check with the
financial aid office. Thing is, usually for many automatic entry scholarships, they do generally contact you if you're being considered for something, and this is for most schools, but then again, there are different procedures and they may change them from year to year. So the best thing to do is if you're curious about whether you're eligible for a scholarship or if that scholarship is still being offered and you don't need to do any additional application or whatever, then to check with the administrator. So in this case, you might want to call up U of T's financial aid office, or even sometimes admissions or the registrar might know about certain entrance scholarships specifically.
And sorry, I just remembered, from my own personal experience, I was told about the scholarships that I'd won when I received my acceptance letter to U of T. And if, for example, the awards are based on your academic average, maybe they are waiting for your final scores, or they could even be waiting until, yeah, they might be waiting for your final scores, but I would just check. We have a question here. Should I study faster so I have more time to apply for scholarships, or should I consider staying up a little late? To help you out here, this is one of the biggest myths that we have with students, that the only scholarships they can win are the ones for when they're starting their first year of university or college. Rest assured, there are scholarships all throughout your academic career. So if you're between your first and your second year, there are plenty of awards out there. I know Karen actually applied to a scholarship after she graduated. So hopefully that eases your mind in the sense that you don't have to apply for all the scholarships you want to win this year. You have time to apply at any point throughout your academic career.
Also, you can interpret that question in a different way. I think they're also asking if they don't have time to put into writing scholarship applications, if they should basically give up some of the time they have for their studies to work on the applications, or should they just give it up as a lost cause?
I think that depends on your priorities. If you'd like to get a little bit of help with financing your education through scholarships, it is useful to put the time and effort into it. I would say that, as Brittany has mentioned, once you've done the first couple, the next ones become easier. So sometimes you just have to devote that first chunk of time to begin with. Some scholarships don't necessarily require you to write an essay. All you do is sort of send in your information or fill in other things. So they might not necessarily take too long. But as I said, there are scholarships all throughout your academic career, so I wouldn't worry. Like maybe when you have less busy things going on, you can apply for scholarships. Another big myth that people have is all scholarship deadlines are at the end of April. Not true at all. We have over 29,000 scholarships listed on our site worth $93 million, and they have deadlines all throughout the year. We've actually added 6,000 scholarships to our site in the last 6 months or so, so there are constantly new ones being added that have new deadlines and things like that. So I would say there's always time to apply for a scholarship, and if you're a little bit busy now, then maybe put it on the table for now and apply when you have a bit more time. Next question, is the quality of your volunteer work better than the quantity?
I would definitely say yes. It's often more relevant to have, perhaps one or two things that mean a lot to you rather than, 2 pages of one-time events. It's better to kind of focus in on something, especially for those of you that are kind of thinking of ways that you can volunteer now to further prepare yourself. I would try to focus in on something where you can demonstrate your leadership and your initiatives, whether that be starting a club at your school or initiating a community project or something like that. Tons of different ways to get involved, but don't feel like it has to be, something that takes up every hour of your day, or that you've done, 3 pages worth of community work. That's not necessarily the most important thing. Quality is definitely more important for sure.
I would also just add that volunteer activities are a great way of discovering your interests. and maybe even helping you to figure out what you'd like to apply to in school or do later on in life. I know for sure the volunteer activities I was involved in, which were around education and charity work and environmental things, have definitely informed where I am today in terms of what I'm doing. So they can be useful exercises for you to just try something and see if you like it, and you might discover your passion. So it's always good to dabble, but again, as Brittany says, you don't need to have 3 pages worth of volunteer activities.
Yeah, and also if you do require a reference letter, if you do have more quality experiences in your volunteer work, the volunteer coordinator would probably, most likely, not necessarily, but likely be a really great reference for you, especially if you have a really great experience there and they know you well and everything. Just because you happen to volunteer many hours in an organization doesn't necessarily mean that you get the most out of your experience.
The next question we have is for Brittany. What was one major activity that you did, volunteer work, school, or community, that became the basis for your winning applications?
Major one I talked about is that there's a Christmas Eve dinner that my family does every year, and it's a local restaurant in Burnaby that shuts down, and we bring in people from downtown missions and from local low-income families and things like that. And in the months leading up to it, we just collect presents and just plan out the event. So it's something I've been involved with since I was a little kid, and something that's really important to me. So that's why I chose to discuss that. A few other things I talked about. I was really active actor in high school and really involved in theater, so that was another passion of mine.
Next question. If the scholarship application asks for a resume, how long can the resume be in terms of page length?
Usually they're pretty good about clarifying what they want from you. If not, I wouldn't give them more than 2 pages. And if you're completely unsure, again, just take the extra minute and give them a phone call just so you know what they're looking for, just in case maybe they have an expectation that they didn't clarify in the application. So if they don't clarify it specifically, I would just give them a call just to find out exactly what they're looking for there.
Next question. For chancellor scholarships requiring high grade 12 marks, are the midterm marks used or the final marks if the scholarship is given out in early June? I think it would depend on the scholarship provider. You can ask them or send them an email and check what grades that they might use. Even if the scholarship is awarded in early June, maybe the judging process is done before then. So in case your final marks are not in by that point, they'll use your midterm marks. So I'd check with the scholarship provider. The next question kind of ties on to that. Does our final result affect scholarships?
It kind of, again, varies depending on the individual scholarship provider and what you're going after. If you are interested in, or if you are pursuing those academic-based scholarships directly through major institutions, and that's something that comes into play. But again, how they manage it is up to them. For example, with SFU and UBC, with me personally, I received notification in April, and then I believe it was just confirmed in June after my final grades were in. But for most people, I would say that you don't have that much of a dramatic shift in your grades between that time period unless, a certain event occurred. So I would think that you'd be okay, but again, it's best to just contact that individual institution or maybe just read up through the financial aid and award section because they may outline it there.
The other thing I would add is over 80% of the scholarships listed on our site don't ask for an academic average. So if that's not part of their criteria for getting this scholarship, then it may not matter. Next question, are there scholarships for grade 9, 10, or 11 students? The answer to that is yes, but there aren't too many. What I would say is when you sign up for an account, you can put in your profile information. So you can put that you're still in your earlier years of high school, and we'll match you to any awards. That might be because the scholarship administrator is more focused on another aspect. So maybe if it's a cultural or a heritage type award, then it's more that they're looking to help people in that community further their education, whether it's high school or post-secondary. There are sometimes some awards offered by organizations or associations that they have award levels for high school students. So an example of this is the Fraser Institute, which has an economics essay contest. This year's question is about, are the rich getting rich and the poor getting poorer? And anyone can submit so long as they're a student here in North America. And they actually have a specific prize level for high school students. So if you are in grade 9, 10, or 11, you may be able to win. If you find that there aren't any awards that you're eligible for, what we always advise students is it's never too early to start doing your research. You're going to get pretty busy in grade 12 and have lots of things going on in terms of applications, exams. It's maybe your last year with your friends around you. So if you can do some of the homework in advance, so in grade 10 or 11 and mark out, okay, these are the scholarships I want to apply for, these are the volunteer activities I want to get involved in, these are the people I'd like to write my references, and that's always helpful for once you get to grade 12 and have to do your applications.
Yeah, and as Brittany mentioned earlier in the presentation, if you have a good template to work from, you basically cut down on a lot of the work that you have to do for your scholarship applications.
Next question we have is, are there more disadvantages to staying for a lapse year?
So an additional year of school, is that what they're
I assume so. So I think they stay for an extra year or potentially take a gap year.
In regard to the gap year,
Mm-hmm.
you still want to look into scholarships now because, as I mentioned before, there's certain scholarships allow you to defer the award. So if you have that opportunity, you may only be eligible for it in a certain year that you are now for certain scholarships. So that's why you still want to get involved and do your research because they may give you up to, a year or two to use the actual funds themselves. So it's always good to get started on the process, now, just so you're aware of what's out there and can prepare yourself for when you do come back.
The next question we have is it the case that for most scholarships offered by schools or universities,
you have to be
attending that school, or can you win a scholarship for one school while you're currently at another university?
Sorry, go ahead.
That depends, I guess, on the awarding criteria for the scholarship. Usually if it's offered by a school, you must attend that school and can only use the scholarship for there. But if I understand the second part of the question correctly, if you're at a current school and you're looking to transfer to another one, then there may be transfer scholarships available where they're awarded by the school you're at rather than the transfer school you're going to. Next question, are we allowed to reuse essays for other scholarship applications?
You always want to, you don't want to just start sending off the same essay over and over again. That's not what we're suggesting. What you do want to have is that template that you can modify. Now, it's to your benefit to personalize every essay that you send out because it's going to be clear to them whether you fully addressed their question the way they wanted you to, and again, whether you referenced the provider themselves. So you want to make sure that you take that time to kind of work from your base and craft into what they're looking for. You don't want to just photocopy an essay and send it off to 30 plus applications. That's not the way you want to go for sure.
The next question we have is someone who's asking if they're involved in their community but not so much in school. Does it matter where their volunteer experience is coming from, and is one type of volunteer experience better than the other? So is community experience better than school experience?
I wouldn't say so. Plus there's usually quite a bit of overlap, and it's easy to create overlap if you need to. For example, if you're involved in a certain club at school, maybe you guys do community events as well, so then you hit both bases. For the most part, you don't need to worry if you're more involved in your community is not involved at school, as long as you're involved, period. There are certain scholarships that are more specific. For example, the Canadian Principals Association, their essay is all about involvement in school specifically, and with BC Hydro Power Pioneers, it's all about involvement in community specifically. So you'll encounter certain essays and applications that are like that, but for the most part, it's not something you need to worry about.
And we have, I guess, the final question. This student is in their second semester. Oh, actually, just got another one. This student is in their second semester of college, and they're looking to apply for a university, and I assume transfer. So they're wondering if they should use their current college grades or should they use their previous old grade 12 results. I guess to answer that, most scholarship providers are looking for your most recent grades. If in doubt, ask your scholarship provider whether they're looking for your high school grades or whether they're looking for your current college grades. But generally speaking, it's usually they're looking for your most recent academic results. Next question we have is, are there scholarships based on volunteer hours? If so, how many hours do I need?
There's not really a general answer for that. Some applications ask you for hours, other ones don't. So that's kind of a tough one to answer.
Yeah, I can't think of any scholarships offhand, but I do recall seeing one. I believe it was for nursing or something, and you had to complete a certain number of hours in order to be eligible for that scholarship. But generally speaking, it's more based on the experience you have versus the number of hours of volunteer work that you've done.
When you build your scholarship search profile on our site, you can mark one of the criteria as volunteer work, and that will give you a list of any scholarships that require volunteer activity. But as Sharon said, it's more about the experience rather than the number. So I think that wraps up all the questions we have. Once again, Brittany, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation and answering these questions for us and sharing your experiences. We hope that everybody found this session to be useful and it'll help you on your scholarship journey and academic career. We look forward to hearing from you. You can connect with us on Facebook or Twitter if you have any more questions. We're more than happy to help.